Okay, we are live. Whoops, wrong direction. There we go. We are live from Jerusalem. I'm AviAbelow. Today's Israel Straight Talk. We will be talking today about the anti-Israel bias at the United Nations and why you should care. All right? And it is very important why you should care. Now, here we go. The United Nations, there's so much hypocrisy. So much hypocrisy. And you could see it just by how they deal with Israel. All right, let's go into this. Did you know the United Nations has two different organizations to deal with refugees? Right? Oh, yeah, it makes sense. There's so many refugees in the world. There should be two different organizations, right? Well, let's go into what each refugee organization actually does, what their mission is at the United Nations. So first of all, the first organization is the UNHRC. Okay? The UNHRC is responsible for over 34 million refugees, at least the stats from this article was last written, from over 125 different countries. All right, basically responsible for most of all of the refugees all over the world, right? 34 million refugees, 125 different countries. Totally makes sense. The United Nations has an organization dealing with refugees. Okay. There is a second organization that deals with refugees. It's called UNRWA, UNRWA. UNRWA's mandate of the United Nations is only to deal with one, that's right, one refugee population. Which one? The Arabs who lost their homes due to the 1948 war, where the Arab world attacked Israel to destroy her and massacre all the Jews. But surprisingly to the world, Israel won in defending herself from the onslaught of the Arab attack. And some Arabs lost their homes. And as a result of the war, the United Nations set up a second organization to deal with refugees. Only those Arab refugees. That's it. That's their mandate. That's their mission, to deal with one population. All right, so already we're seeing something very, very wrong on the international level of its dealings with Israel, because there's one organization that deals with all the refugees from all over the world. Again, over 30 million refugees, 125 countries. And yet there's a second organization that deals only with the refugees that resulted of the Arab war to destroy Israel, but they lost, so there were some Arab refugees that needed to be helped and dealt with. Fine. Fact number one. Let's go to fact number two. What's fact number two? What's their mission? The mission for UNHRC, which again is the organization that deals with all the refugees all over the world, is to resettle, to help these refugees be resettled and get back to normal life. Why are they refugees? Because they were involved in conflict, conflict in their areas. They lost their homes. And they need to be resettled in other places around the world and get back to normal life as much as possible. Fine, understood, wonderful mission, wonderful mandate for an organization to help refugees all over the world. Now let's go to the mission of the refugees that UNRWA deals with. Okay, their mission and mandate is very different. Their mission is to just handle and take care of the refugees, the Arab refugees, until they are resettled in Israel. Right? How do we know they want to resettle them in Israel? Because in their schools in Gaza, run by UNRWA organization and employees, they teach the Arab children that one day they will return to live in their original homes in today's Israel. Okay, so here we go again. one organization that deals with refugees from all over the world. Their mandate is what? To resettle refugees. Totally makes sense. Help them get on with their lives because there was a war. War happens. Unfortunately, people are killed in wars. Unfortunately, people lose their homes in wars. We need people to get on with their lives. UNHRC is there to do that. Second refugee organization of the UN, UNRWA, only to help the Arab refugees who lost their homes due to the Arab onslaught to destroy Israel. And yet, what is their mandate? Their mandate is just take care of the Arabs until they get resettled in Israel, which basically means the destruction of the state of Israel. Okay? Third difference between the two different organizations, and this is key, folks, really, really key. The definition of a refugee. Okay? Under UNHRC, and I'm going to read. The definition of a refugee is a person for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group. They are then outside the country of their nationality. Totally makes sense, right? And who it is? It's that person. Okay? So what's a refugee according to UNHRC dealing with refugees from all over the world? A person who loses their place of origin, and it's that person. What do you mean that person? Meaning their children and their grandchildren are not refugees. Only that person who lost his home because of the conflict is a refugee. Okay, great. Now let's go to UNRWA. UNRWA's definition of a refugee is an Arab who lived in the state of Israel between the years of 1946 to 1948. Okay? What does that mean? It means that there were a lot of Arabs that the United Nations knew and the world governments knew who moved to live in the area that became the state of Israel only during the 2-year period of 1946 to 1948. Meaning their nationality was not from that location. They were not brought up there. They did not raise their children there. They moved there for the 2 years before the Arab world wanted to destroy Israel, lost their war, that then caused Arabs who had moved there to lose their homes. Now, there were Arabs who lived there before 1946 who lost their homes, and they obviously were also included as refugees. But the refugee's definition for UNRWA is one that includes those who moved there between the years of 1946 to 1948. That is not a definition of refugee. That is a total abuse and misuse of international law, humanitarian efforts to be anti-Israel, because nowhere else in the world does that is that included in the definition of a refugee. And a refugee is if you lost your nationality, you live in that country, your family is from that country, and then because of a war, you lose your home and you become a refugee. But all of a sudden, when it came to the Arab-Israeli conflict, as long as an Arab lived in this place that became Israel for 2 years prior, according to the United Nations, in the mandate and definition for UNRWA, a refugee includes those people who had only lived here but for even less than a few months, up to 2 years. Okay? Crazy. Crazy. And then finally, the other hypocrisy in terms of the definition of refugees. We said earlier, UNHRC, refugees all over the world. Who are the refugees? Only those who lost their homes. Their children and grandchildren born later are not part of the numbers of the refugee status. They're not considered refugees. Only the people who actually lost the homes. If they didn't have children and they have children later in refugee camps, they're not considered refugees. Yet, when it comes to the Arabs from the Arab-Israeli conflict who lost their homes because of the Arab aggression against Israel, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren are considered refugees. Don't listen to me. Look at the statistics. Look at that. Go to Professor Google, check on your statistics, okay, of refugees. Back in 1948, there were around 800,000 Arabs who lost their homes. Okay, so according to the regular UNHRC guidelines, definitions, there were 800,000 refugees. That's it. Today, go to the books, go to UNRWA, go to the United Nations, go look up your whatever articles on the refugees from the Arab-Israel conflict. Their numbers are now in the millions. The millions! It's the only refugee population that's grown over the generations, over the decades. The only one, because they are cooking the books against Israel. There is an agenda here, an anti-Israeli agenda that the United Nations is part of, that the governments of the world are part of because they let this facade happen. To cook the books, make it look like there are millions and millions of refugees, even though according to the United Nations, a regular refugee organization would not be included as refugees. And it makes it look like the refugee crisis is horrible. They're not being resettled anywhere else in the world because they're just being taken care of and babysat by a UN organization to then one day come back into Israel because they have a right of return. What right of return do they have? None. Any conflict in the world, wars happen. There is aggression. We all hope there would be peace. We all hope there would be no wars. We all hope that people wouldn't lose their homes. Unfortunately, it does happen. And yet in every other conflict in the world, refugees are helped by the world, by the United Nations to be resettled, to go on with their lives. And yet here, the refugees from the Arab-Israeli conflict are babysat to then be resettled in Israel, in a sense, to destroy Israel, because those 800,000 official refugees, who today on the books are now over 5-6 million refugees because of the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, one day, if they're going to come back and move into Israel, that's it. The Jewish state of Israel will not be able to exist because now there are all these millions and millions of Arabs from all around the world. Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, America, whoever, the world wants to give them the right of return. It's the only refugee population that the world insists has a right of return. Okay? So again, we were talking about the absolute anti-Israel bigotry and hypocrisy and bias at the United Nations that the world powers take part in. One, because there are the two different UN organizations to deal with refugees, one specifically for the Arabs and one for all the refugees from all over the world. And then the other points we mentioned in terms of the mission is wrong, definition of refugee is wrong, and it's totally anti-Israel, and that these Arab refugees are being used as pawns in a battle to destroy Israel that the United Nations plays along with. And unfortunately, all the powers of the world that let the UN do this are part of this too. Now, why should you care? Okay, why should you? Why should your families? Why should your friends? Why should you care? Whether you like Israel, you don't like Israel, you have your own problems in life. You're just trying to get your paycheck, make it to the end of the day, have food on the table for your kids. Why should you care? Because right now there are powers in the United States government that wants the United Nations to be more powerful. You have European governments that want the United Nations to be more powerful, to have more oversight over your lives and your family's lives where you live. And here we're talking about an organization where human rights abusing countries, anti-democratic countries, totalitarian regimes, terror-supporting states are basically running the show. It's not a democracy. You don't have more right because you're a power, that you're a country that gives equal rights to everyone. No, Iran, a terror-supporting state. Turkey, Syria. Okay, so let's go on. China, North Korea. They all have equal say in the United Nations. And plenty of our governments around the world, especially in the United States and European countries, want to give this body, the United Nations, more power to run your lives. So while they're blatantly anti-Israel and they're abusing a system that was set up to try to bring peace to the world, little by little it is being given more and more power to not just use their bias against us here in Israel, but to use their anti-democratic, totalitarian tactics and abuse of Western values or any values of life and equality to do bad things also in your countries that will affect you and your generations. So that's why you should care about the United Nations. And that's why we're always saying, we are the canary in the mine. The Jewish people, the state of Israel, we are the canary in the mine. Anyone who ignores or prefers to be blind and not stand up together with Israel to fight the hypocrisy, the bigotry, the anti-Israel agenda taking place on all fronts, on the diplomatic front, on the legal international front, the United Nations front. If a person is not willing to stand strong with Israel to right the wrongs that the international community are either doing or allowing to be done, then in the end, it's also going to be coming to you where you live and your families and your friends. So please help us spread the truth. Help your friends and families learn the truth so we can all make a difference, not just for Israel, but for all of us. That's it today for Israel Straight Talk. Join in, continue joining in, try to get the truth, ask questions. We're here on Meerkat. You can send in your comments and questions. It will be a pleasure to deal with anything you have to say. Spread these videos. These videos end up going up on IsraelVideoNetwork.com. We go into each issue and post them. You could spread them, watch them, send them to other people. We will make a difference. So thanks again for joining us. I'm signing off from AviAbelow here in Jerusalem. All the best.